Welcome back to the Matter of Facts podcast on the Prepper Broadcasting Network. We talk prepping, guns, and politics every week on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. Go check out our content at mwfpodcast.com on Facebook or Instagram. You can support us via Patreon or by checking out our affiliate partners. I'm your host, Phil Rabalais. Andrew and Nick are on the other side of the mic, and here's your show. Andrew's not here. Nick is. Eddie is joining us. Let's get the admin work out of the way quickly so we can get to the point of this. First of all, happy Halloween to everybody. I'm wearing my disguise. This is not a mask. Patrons, I always forget to, unless Nick reminds me, to thank the patrons for supporting this insanity. And thank y'all for chipping in a couple of bucks to keep the shit show going because, this is y'all's fault. And if you're upset with the show, then I've got a list of people you can blame. And if you're happy with the show, I got a list of people you could join in their group insanity, if that's your thing. Merch is always a thing. I am wearing the official What Would Bert Do shirt, because anybody that doesn't believe that Bert Gummer is an excellent role model for children, I question your upbringing and your childhood. He's probably partially responsible for me turning into who I am, so thank him for that. But we should all ask ourselves from time to time, what would Bert do in this situation? And now with the admin work out of the way, Nick's with us, Andrew's not, and Eddie is with us. And Eddie, I don't really have to introduce you to the patrons because you're very well known in the patron group. To the listeners, let's see here, nationally ranked black powder and cowboy action shooter, recently went to the World Muzzleloader Championships. TV star. That's the way to put it. TV star all around. Like, don't piss him off if you're within 700 yards of him. He's holding anything made in the last 2 centuries. That's a good way to start. But
and
the reason
therapist.
Eddie and a therapist that has recently started your own practice. Which, by the way, how is that going so far?
I finally paid myself for the first month, so that was great.
Fantastic.
We've gone months without having to be able to pay myself.
Serious
So I finally got a
accomplishment
paycheck
for a new business.
Yeah, taking a paycheck was nice.
I bet.
It's nice
Hey,
when
man.
it works out that way.
Fantastic that it works out that way.
Yeah, I made a mistake and hired a marketing firm, which helped in the beginning, but they are seriously not producing on what they promised, and it's costing. They eat most of my profits. So
Oof.
I have 2 more months till I basically am on the hook for another $3,000 with them, and then we're basically making double what I made at my previous job.
Well, that's the unfortunate thing about business, man. You don't know until you try some of that stuff, and some ideas they don't pan out. But hey, learning opportunity right there. Now you know for
This
next
is a
time,
little
or-
little freebie for anyone. If you ever open up your own thing and a marketing company promises that they can push your SEOs within, less than a year, they're lying to you. It's a minimum a year to 18 months. So don't sign a contract.
Yeah,
That's actually really great to know.
I don't want to say I could have told you that, but like marketing guys always I don't want to say they lie. They overestimate. That's a nice way of saying it.
They did make me a nice website though that I get to take with me. So there's that.
Oh, that's nice. I mean, a quality website's extremely important.
Yeah.
So that's something. So for those of you that don't know, Eddie was in the area affected by Hurricane Helene. Do you care if we mention what area you're in there, Eddie?
My business is in Canton, North Carolina. If you Google me enough, you'll find me. I'm listed in enough places at this point.
Yeah, so kind of in the direct impact area, would you say?
Yeah. Everyone is focusing on Asheville, but our downtown had about, no lie, I think 35 feet of water above the banks, and the river is generally 20 feet below the bank as it starts. So 45 feet of water?
Wow.
I'm not shocked by that.
55. That was bad math,
incredible.
but still.
Yeah, but still, at that point, you're talking about walls of water that are larger than most buildings that are going to be in the average city's downtown area. I mean, unless you're talking skyscrapers or megaplexes, that's a serious amount of water. So
the worst hit spot was about 45 minutes to an hour away from me, so just a little bit past Asheville. There's a famous picture of Hardee's. The water's kind of going over the top of a Hardee's. So, like, think of any fast food restaurant, and the water is at the top of that. And mind you, that Hardee's was nowhere near the river.
Wow. Now, I know you have said in the Patreon chat, and the patrons will be familiar with this, but for the audience, what did you expect going into this? I know you've told me that you expected some flooding.
Yeah. So, what most people probably don't know are it's left their consciousness because that's how the news cycle works. We're already out of the news cycle anyways during this point. But we actually had a hurricane similar to this about 3 years ago, where it was a lot of flooding. Downtown again flooded. The same businesses that kind of got wiped out then, but nowhere near as bad. So but the businesses learned their lessons. There's a car detailing shop downtown. They already knew everything. They pulled out everything of value. They moved out. The bar took all of the brewery that got flooded out last time. They removed all their beer from the brew tanks that they could. They removed everything from the building that they could, thinking, okay, water will come through. Well, it's mostly a concrete. It was an old textile building, so okay, we'll have to swap out the mud and call it a day. And a couple other places, move things out. No one was expecting this much water. And again, the problem it was, we were expecting flooding. I told everyone there was going to be flooding. Stay out of the area. Not to touch on another topic, but stay out of the area. There's a lot of flooding come to the area. It was going to be bad. The biggest problem we had was that there was a lot of rain that came before it, and then when the storm came over, it just started hovering. It didn't push over, and it just stayed there. And I mean, I grew up at the down in the beach, in a place called Currituck, which is right above the Outer Banks of North Carolina. So think the direct coastline. And I know Phil's used to this because of the coast, but if you're not from an area where hurricanes usually hit, storm surge is a thing. Like all the videos you see in Florida, the water's at people's knees and stuff like that. Okay, not taking away from that. It's bad. It's dangerous. You can get stuck in houses and it destroys things. But it's mostly flat ground. Water comes in, water goes out. Well, here in the mountains, you got to think, everything is tall, and then there's, I'm using hand things if you're not watching it, but think of a mountain, then there's the valleys where everyone lives. No one lives on the peaks, everyone lives in the valleys. Well, all that water has to channel somewhere, and it all goes to the valley. And so that's where all this water just got funneled into these spots and then just over flooded these already flooded rivers. And I mean, I think we had 39 inches of rain in less than 24 hours.
Wow.
I mean, we're considered a rainforest here, so we already get a lot of rain, but we hit our annual rainfall in 24 hours.
Yeah, and the audience can't see me over here cringing, but I remember before the storm hit that the estimates I was seeing were something already 24 to 27 inches, which I was telling
2 feet of water.
Yeah, but I was telling my wife, I'm like, 2 feet of water here where I live would cause catastrophic flooding. And I'm 21 feet above sea level here, which is hilarious to everybody that lives anywhere with elevation, but stick with me. But New Orleans is 3 feet below sea level for comparison's sake. So I'm practically living on a hilltop where I am. But 2 feet of water would flood most of this city. 2 feet of water in a mountainous area is a level of catastrophe and I saw this coming, Eddie, because I'm like, if it rains 2 feet at the peak of a mountain, that 2 feet of water is going to go down to the valley. And now you're going to wind up with, 4, 5, 6 feet minimum when it all piles into the valleys. And you're right. I remember y'all had that huge thunderstorm system that blew through, I think 2 days before Helene hit. And I was like, great. So every basin is already filled. Every river is already maxed out. Every pond, every retention pond is already maxed out. And now you're about to put 2 feet of water into it. There's nowhere for it to go.
Well, I don't know that there's anywhere in the country that has room for 2 feet of water.
There's no metro area in North America that can absorb 2 feet of water that fast. No, nobody has the infrastructure for it.
Even assuming flatland, and
Yeah,
not mountains, because realistically, you're losing what? Probably 50 to 70% of the surface area where that water would normally sit due to the elevation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, Raggle Fraggle just jumped in. He's 3.5 hours from New Orleans and only 19 feet above sea level. Yep. Welcome to Louisiana. You got to
I
drive
think my
4
house
hours
where
to
I
find a
grew up
mountain.
in was, I think our house where I grew up in was like a foot above sea level. It was extremely flat.
Down there
Hell,
on the
have been
coast,
down the
yeah.
coast.
But yeah, man, it's just I don't know. It makes my stomach do flip flops hearing about that much rainfall because there's nowhere on Earth that can absorb it. There's nowhere for it to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so the walls of Rotter were dangerous. Let's call it what it is. This is so. First off, I'm going to get the caveats out of the way, so I don't have to come back and touch them. So just give me a minute. I'm extremely thankful that I didn't lose anything to my house. My business got minimal damage. There was a leak in the There was a leak in the roof that we already knew about. That it filled up a 55-gallon trash can and went over the brim. So we already knew that was going to happen. Um, we had friends that had lost a whole lot more. We had friends that had watched their houses float down the river. And then there's people that died, and there was a body hanging in the tree down below my house that I helped a cop get out. Get out. It is so all those caveats out of the way. Extremely thankful. All right, now we can move on to the next part. So yeah, the water was extremely dangerous. The big thing though was the mud and the landslides. Like all this water just caused all the ground to destabilize. I mean, not just thinking trees that get tipped over in the wind, okay? Because I mean, that happens. We all know that. But like all the reason all the highways collapsed was because the wall of water just went underneath when they're going down the rivers, went underneath the roads and destabilized the whole road system and just collapsed whole highways. The I think it, it's no lie. I mean, I was talking to someone that's involved with the mapping the area. We're going to have a new topographer come in this area because whole rivers have changed their routes. The whole landscape has changed. We're going to have new maps are going to have to be drawn after the storm.
Wow. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I know, I've never had that kind of rainfall around me. Fortunately, never have. We've had storms that have dropped, a couple inches of rain in a
Hmm.
couple of hours, and that has washed out driveways, that has caused road embankments near and along creeks to wash out culverts. And this is relatively flat land, so the water can't really gain that much velocity. It's you know we see the pictures of the highways being gone, and I think that it really doesn't truly hit home until you say something like the topography of the region has to be remapped. So that means that the ground level has changed, not feet, not a few feet. In some places, what do you say? I do like 5, 10 feet, 15 feet in some spots.
Yeah, I mean, there's some places where, like 20 feet of the mountain is gone. One of the rivers that I'm talking about that changed its thing, it jumped its banks and now is about, I think it's 14, 15 feet over from where it originally is, and it just cut a new
Hmm.
swath. So like that river's
Wow.
changed, then and then down in that it changed its course right through the middle of a school. Actually.
Okay.
There's that was the one I'm specifically thinking of. It decided this new river goes through a school.
Hmm.
Well, and the other thing that I don't even know, yeah, I don't know how long it's going to be before y'all can find out if this came to pass. But with the sheer weight of the water that's compiling in these low lying areas, because we've started seeing this in New Orleans after repeat, years and years and years of low lying areas and the weight of the water compacting the ground. You might find that some of these valleys have actually like lost elevation relative to sea level
Hmm.
between soil
Maybe.
erosion, between the weight of the water. I mean, which downstream of this is going to make flooding even worse in those areas. It's like I don't know a better way to say it. Like, guys, Mother Nature doesn't take any prisoners. When she gets pissed off, she tears everything to pieces.
So one of the people asking in the comments, is it a new river or a dry ancient river? No, these were active rivers. It's not like out in Texas, like they're 40 feet wide but only a foot deep. Some of these rivers could only be, a couple feet deep and stuff like that, depending on where it is. But the major rivers, they're, anywhere between 10 and 20 feet deep at their deepest parts. We're talking, like boulder holes and stuff like that. So these were active rivers because like we're known for fly fishing and trout fishing here. So these were active, extremely like well producing rivers.
So aside from the rainfall and the road washouts and obviously the power loss, what other like immediate on the ground effects were you guys seeing? Stuff that, as soon as the storm passed, you noticed had changed.
So here, it was hard in the beginning because we lost power. I live up on a mountain, so we were kind of stuck in the mountain. We didn't know we knew downtown would have been flooded, and so we didn't know what we could expect. And what made it harder was all the cell phone service in the area just dropped. So there was usually, in storms, you can rely on cell phone coverage and stuff like that to get news. There was all the cell networks died. So it was basically, we were an island. There was no way of accessing Asheville. I don't live in Asheville, but like there's no way of accessing Asheville. Chimney Rock legit just it's a little hard to say this because me and my wife took our dog there like a month before it happened, but Chimney Rock, which is a cool place to go visit and camp and everything, doesn't exist anymore. But Asheville was an island. There was no way to get there. That's why they were using helicopters to take and supplies, but there's no coverage, no news coming in and out. All the water treatment was you're either lost water completely or when your water is full of sewage and dead bodies and dead other things, and so you couldn't have any water and no power, and I guess this is the part where I can make it real fun for myself. To top it all off, a day and a half before the storm hit, I threw my back out on the most oh my god, I'm old way fashionable. I sat down and my back got thrown out. And so as the storm was coming through, I'm laying on the ground, relying on to get. Now, I told you guys this earlier, but I'm going to outsay for everyone else. This isn't a crap on my wife thing. This isn't. She is a brilliant woman. She's getting her doctorate. She's smarter than hell, and she's the only dumb thing she's ever done in her life was marry me. But I was relying on her and giving her instructions on doing things, but she's always relied on me because I've just done it. And you know what? I'm going to call it out. FEMA was doing their fucking job. Okay. So shut the fuck up about that. Anyways. But my wife, I had to rely on her to do, to get things done, but she's never done it before. And it was kind of the whole thing. So like, I was sitting there thinking, I forget the name of the series, but the one where he makes that survival book, where, like everything he writes down, the one that lives in the cave and everything, like they take over the valley. You know what I'm talking about?
Franklin Horton, is it?
Yeah, the Franklin Horton series, but he makes a little survival book that like everything he needs to take care of is in this book. So if I'm not home, you just rely on the book. That the first thing I thought about after this was like, okay, cool, this is something I need to do. So like if something goes wrong, I can do this. But like we had food, okay, we have a generator. But what I didn't have was gas. I had 1 gallon of gas. In fact, we're now dealing with the fact that she spilled gas in her car because, again, this is not a crap on my wife thing, but she has never touched a gas can in her life. She didn't even know how to open up my gas cans. So she actually broke one of my gas can lids. And when I told her, hey, I need you to go buy gas before the storm, I was sitting there thinking, hey, okay, you're gonna fill up every single gas can I have. There's a 5-gallon one behind the home. Go grab every single gas can. She brought 1 gallon of gas. But if you've never done it before,
you don't know.
On you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's a perfect
like,
learning point for anyone listening to this show. If you've got a spouse, if you've got a girlfriend, if you've got roommates, at least have them walk through the basics of some of your most key things. How to start the generator, how to fuel the generator, maybe if they're mechanically inclined, how to do an oil change on your generator, because after a week of running it, you're going to need that done too. And if, like in your case, Eddie, your back's blown out, you're not going to be laying on the ground dumping oil out of a generator.
Yeah, and the fun thing about that was that my generator, because they all have fuses in them, and like they automatically trip in case something goes bad. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they it had tripped, and because I can't see it in person, I can't tell her why it's not working. And so I eventually had to work my way over there and like re-trip the RFIC outlet, the one that you can put
Oh
beside
yeah,
like
the
there's
GFI
waters.
outlet. Yeah.
Yeah, GFI. Thank you. Yeah, so I had to trip that, and she was actually pushing the button, and it wasn't working. And reason why is I forgot that one is it's extremely hard to do. Like I actually have to usually take like a metal pole and stick it in and push it because it's a
Oh, it's
really
one of the
hard
deep
button to
set
re-trip.
ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and so the generator we have will run the whole house. But like that was another thing. Like I had been it was on my to-do list of go ahead and so that I could plug the line in. I could just flip switches and plug the line in. Well, I hadn't gotten to it yet. So I realized that the my power cords I had, I only had one heavy duty power cord. Excuse me, the heavy duty power cords, like the 220-volt cords I have, weren't
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the correct plug for the generator. It didn't fit the thing. So I was using regular 120 volts to run my freezers and fridges and stuff like that. Now, granted, I could do it, but I had to cycle them because I couldn't have them all on the same lines.
That makes
So
So like
sense.
it was just a
now,
cascade of failure of stuff that like it. Now, granted, like things worked. We didn't lose any food, but like it was just all these cascades things piled up on top of each other.
so now
Not
it's
to
time
mention,
for a
like
moment
only
of.
thing we had is a little bit of food. Sorry.
No, you're good.
No, you're
Now it's
good.
time for a moment of honesty. The last hurricane near miss we had here at the house a few months ago, I actually had got an interlock kit installed on the house so I could hook up a 220 line from my 5K straight to the house. And then I discovered that evening the power hadn't gone out. It did not go out, but we were getting ready because we kind of saw it coming. I discovered that my generator had a NEMA 20 amp outlet on it, and the entire interlock kit, the cord and everything, was a NEMA 30.
That is a very different plug.
Yeah, it's different enough that they ain't going to go together without hacking that I probably shouldn't do. So, needless to say, my wife and I pivoted very quickly to get every extension cord in the house. And fortunately, we have enough because that's how we had to do it after Hurricane Ida. But yeah, Eddie, totally feeling your freaking pain on that one.
Yeah.
First
The
time I
thing
had
that
to
like
use
it
my
really
generator under pressure, the battery was dead.
No
So
freaking
yeah the
pills.
thing that like got me was that I had never checked to see if that plug worked because the generator was a gift. It was a gift from my father-in-law because he upgraded his generator to a propane, a multi-fuel, but he's propane up in Pennsylvania, so he
yeah.
could run it off the house propane. And he asked
Nice.
me, do you guys want this generator? Because all I had was like a little tailgater. I'm like, absolutely, I'll take this generator. And so I had this power cord, and you know what? Call me stupid, whatever. But I didn't know that the 220 plugs were different. I thought they were all the same. So like I
No.
thought because I grabbed the plug that I keep out in my camper. I grabbed the line that I have that, and I brought it back home. And I was like, oh look, this doesn't fit because it was one of those heavy duty lines that end in like 5 different receptacles, so I could plug in
Yeah.
everything off that. You know, I
Yeah.
just figured we're good because we put the generator outside our kitchen window, open up the screen a little bit, and run it through. I was like, oh, cool, we'll be good. Yeah, it didn't work that way.
Yeah, unfortunately that's the way it is. I mean, this is why I like to tell people that the best time to try out your generator is when it's 65 and sunny. That way you're
Yeah,
not having to try to do it, in the pitch black. You're not having to try to do it when it's freezing cold. You got gloves on. You've got time, and then you can assess these problems in advance and try to compensate for them. But hey, man, it's a perfect example for people, man. And fortunately for you guys, it sounds like it worked out pretty okay. I mean, you were able to make use of the tool. It wasn't down entirely. You had a fallback plan. That's fantastic. But that's these things are complicated. Like when I bought my generator, I had no idea how to hook this thing up to my house. So I brought an electrician out and I had him show me how to use the entire panel system that's on the wall over to my left. I mean, fortunately, I knew a guy that was very good at these things that could walk me through it because I am not an electrician. But you know.
Yeah, I mean there was definitely some lessons to be learned. One of the things that we were really happy about, granted, so we had friends that lost stuff. We had they didn't lose their entire house, but they lost basically their bottom half of their house. Water just came flooding through their house. And they just finished like making it a I forget the name of the word, but if you take a basement and you make it livable,
Yeah.
what's the word?
Yeah.
But
Finished
they
basement.
basically
Yeah.
finished it. There we go. They had just done that and finished it like a month prior, and
Oh,
then all the stuff came through. But so
that
we were over
sucks.
there helping them with stuff, but we I this again, this isn't to crap on any of my friends or anything, but like I guess because coming from the hurricane stuff, I was used to these things. I felt thankful that like we could give people generators.
Yeah.
We could give stuff like this. My wife learned a painful lesson that I happened to be out of town doing some stuff, and when she finally got the generator back, because power came back on, don't try to take a generator out of your car by yourself because she wrenched her shoulder. So
Oh.
They're heavy.
we both learned lessons.
Yeah.
I mean, good on her for trying, but dadgum, those things are
Those things are
deceptively
heavy.
heavy.
No, I mean, I think some of the biggest things that like the biggest lessons on the ground here is that like you can't prepare for you can't prepare for this sheer amount of water. The other thing that I'm not going to share some of the stories I've heard directly, but like the mud here is different than mud that you can think of like where you're at, unless you live in Georgia in this area. It's that
Clay,
red
isn't
clay
it?
Georgia mud. So yeah, so it turns like the mud here is like it's caustic. It'll actually burn if you get it on you long enough, just because the minerals that are in it.
Huh.
It'll start to create heat on the body, and it acts like quicksand. So the mud was actually like sucking people under.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I've definitely heard stories that like I'll tell you guys afterwards because I don't want to traumatize the whole show, but it is things that like I don't know if I could go on living if that happened. Some of the stuff that I've heard involving the mud.
I've heard stories come in that area that are heartbreaking.
Yeah,
That's
the
not
mud
good.
aspect I think was the biggest thing, but some of what is kind of like a little bit I guess enlightening, heartening, whatever word you want to use is so with all the stuff going on, we had a flood of people come in. Females on the ground day one. They weren't in like the official capacity because we didn't have roads. They can't bring in the big semis because you can't. There's no road. So they were on the ground day one, airdropping in supplies, and then the Cajun Navy showed up that afternoon. The Redneck Air Force showed up. We had the coolest thing was we had mule teams, like old timey mule trains, actually were showing up and delivering supplies. But all these people are showing up day one, and with all the host of first responders and everything, the local therapists stepped up. They were doing pro bono cases, working with the first responders, trying to help them just digest the trauma they're seeing. But in that, they've actually started. I think I put it in the Patreon chat. The screenshots of people just talking about, hey, how to be. These are things that you should probably have on hand for a storm because people just didn't even have the basics, like cans of food. The Actually, I can use one of my friends because she doesn't listen to this and she'll never hear this. We find out that during the storm, she doesn't keep food in the house. She buys her meals daily. If she's gonna cook, she buys everything she's gonna cook that day. It's wild to me to think that, but like when everything went out, no storm, she had no food. The other thing that was
Like
a little interesting
none?
because everything was cash only around here. Most people don't keep cash on them. I mean, the only reason that I was even good at it is I granted the sad part is it was in my business and my business was cut off from the house because of the sheer flood of water going through downtown that was still actively running for 3 days past the storm.
Oof.
I had like a $500 cash deposit sitting at my desk at work, so we had to find a way to get to work so that I could get the cash, then we could actually use it on various things. But most people don't have cash, and we went to one store and we bought some more canned goods. Not so much that we didn't because we didn't have food, but I was tired of eating expired MRE, and if she basically had to eat one more thing of spaghetti, she was going to murder me. But while we're there, something that if say you're addicted to like alcohol or something like that, and or your caffeine, like no, like, but these are things that you have to have in your system. Think about
Mhm.
having more of it before the storm hits, because like there is guys basically tweaking because they haven't had their beer and they're going through withdrawals and all the stores are shut down.
Now, if I under now, I've never been addicted to something, so I don't know. You're being a therapist, maybe you do. Isn't alcohol withdrawals potentially fatal?
Yeah, the bends from alcohol withdrawal can kill you, and it is
Jeez.
physically painful.
Oh, I believe
That's
that.
why,
I
like,
mean,
if anyone tries to it's anyone tries to like go off of alcohol, they generally recommend that you check yourself into a hospital because they're going to titrate you off and give you pain meds.
wow,
Jesus.
man, that's a heck of a time to be laid up, in a
Yeah,
disaster scenario like that, and especially over something like your alcoholism or your caffeine
yeah,
addiction or whatever. Like, I, hey, I'm the first one to admit I function well in the morning because of coffee anymore, which is why
yeah.
I have 10 pounds of
It
it
was wild.
sitting over
Yeah, it
there.
was wild just thinking about these things, and just seeing the different stuff. But like a lot of people, they just didn't have the basic supplies. You know what? It kind of even told us, like, wait a second, we don't have a radio, because who has a radio these
Mm,
days? I get it. Like, if you're listening to this, look, I have a radio. Well, you know what? I don't have a radio, and the closest thing I had to it was something in my garage that you had, like, it was like an old, but it had to like be plugged in. It had no battery capacity, and like I was thinking, man, I have a battery powered radio of weather bands, but it stays in my camper that's up in Winchester. That right when
mm.
because I own two campers. One that's a travel camper. The other is up on center blocks at a range place that I go to multiple times a year for a shooting competition, because I don't feel
Nice.
like pulling it back and forth 9 hours.
Yeah.
But everything else, the thing that's there. All my battery powered stuff is there because everything in that camper is battery powered.
Hey man, that's something that people don't think about some days.
I'm going
So,
to tell you
one
that most
go for
people
it.
don't think about a lot of these things until you're faced with them head first, and that's usually when the thinking starts. I mean, I've been very frank on this show and in person for years about the fact that I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm not the smartest guy alive, and I'm certainly not God's gift to, preparedness or storm readiness. Most of the stuff my family does, we do because I learned this the hard way by eating the suck sandwich and realizing it
Mhm.
didn't taste very good, and then be like, I should do some of these things so it doesn't suck as bad next time. So like there
What I
is
have been doing.
no shame
Go
whatsoever in
ahead. Sorry.
hindsight.
What I have been doing is that I basically just opened up a Word document on my laptop in the middle of like when, because we had power, so I could use my laptop for no internet, even though no internet. But I was just
Yeah.
basically just typing out ideas of things to fix. Like, why have I, like, in the moment? Okay, this is something that needs to be fixed now, so that way I don't forget it in hindsight.
Perfect. Perfect. I mean, anytime you have a scenario like this, if you think of something while it's top of mind, you got to write that stuff down, because by the time you get through everything, you're going to be exhausted, and there's no way in hell you're going to remember the first thing you thought of,
Yeah,
day one of the storm. So, how about,
I'm
after the flooding went down, after the initial damage was all done, what kind of major effects did you see? I mean, obviously, intermittent cell towers, I'm sure, intermittent power, water. What did you notice?
So it honestly took about 4 to 5 days for us to get out of our mountain, just because
Wow.
of the town. The town came in, and there was power poles down everywhere. So they basically contracted the big wrecker company in town to just park their wrecker trucks blocking roads,
Mm,
and just to stop people from going downtown, because there was a lot of looting going on. So
mm.
just trying to like shut down on the sheer amount of looting going on, and to try to keep people out of the immediate danger zones. So once I found was able to get out, we started helping friends, and that's a lot of what I noticed was just I don't know, just the sheer amount of devastation. There is still like people's entire houses are just gutted and just stacked 20 feet on the curve in front of them. And I don't know, the uh I know this isn't part of the actual question, but like the survivor guilt aspect was weird. It was real.
Really?
I remember when we
Mhm.
got we got cell phone coverage back. And not even internet, like cell phone coverage back. I'm sitting there, I was laying in bed watching YouTube and just, trying to think of something else. And all of a sudden it hit me like I'm laying in my bed watching YouTube, and there are people that don't have a house tonight because they watched it float around the river. And man, that struck me so hard. I just couldn't sleep that night because of that.
There's
Yeah, I can't imagine.
no, but I mean, survivor guilt is that's a very real, very palpable thing for people that go through any kind of shared traumatic experience because
Mhm.
Eddie, you're the therapist. I'm just the guy that, got treated for survivor guilt decades ago. But like, you do get in your own head about like, why did that storm take them out and not me? Why did it destroy their
Mhm.
home and not mine? You start to feel guilty because you didn't get screwed as bad as everybody else did. And for anybody that's
Yeah.
never lived through it, I mean, you can rationalize it, but my experience has been that there's nothing rational about the after effects of trauma. It is purely emotional, and even for like the most rational, hyper organized, type A neurodivergent person you probably have ever met, I can't control my emotions when it comes to traumatic events. It gets into you, and you can't. It's gonna go where it goes.
The thing that I've really seen that I've been appreciative of is that I'll probably rabbit trail on this thought, so pull me back if I go too off course. Is the sheer amount of the on the ground grassroots people helping. Um, the uh, the government is the government. It has red tape. Like, if you want to try to bring down your track hoe and your backhoe to help, and you go through the FEMA camp, well, they have to make sure that you're licensed and insured and stuff like this, because
Sure.
it's just, if you do something, you mess up. It's and you say you're
You
helping
could
under
make
FEMA,
the
then FEMA's gonna
situation
hook.
worse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so like there were 100% people coming down that weren't saying anything, and trust me, I was part of some of the people that was helping get people down here. That was like, all right, hey, this person just needs help. I'll just say what it is. The Masons, the Masons across the country really stepped up, and they already have the court, all the lodges are a thing, and so probably about 80% of the supplies you see that came to this area were donated by Masons or were handled through Masons, and the National Guard actually has been working directly with the Masons on the ground, because of most of the warehouses here are owned by Masons. So
Interesting.
it's been kind of an interesting aspect in that, but it's been really cool seeing all the people step up and help, and all the donations come through. And I mean, it's I think I shared this with Nick, but the coolest thing I think is going on right now. Like, I'm in my office in downtown Canton. Right behind me, they're doing those trunk or treat stuff. Well, if you've lost your entire house, you don't really have the bandwidth to buy your kid a Halloween costume. So a group of people came down and had Halloween costumes for kids, and artists showed up and are doing face painting for the kids, and they can go pick out a costume, get their face painted, and then go trick or treating.
It's fantastic.
I
I
mean,
mean,
just
I'm
little things like
sure.
that we just haven't been thought about.
Right. I mean, I don't have to tell you, Eddie. You know better than probably either me or Phil that the kids are going to be hit really hard by this, because I
Yeah.
can't imagine they're back in school for most of them.
Actually, so Nashville started back this week. They lost
Really?
27 days. They
Wow.
um
That's
a lot. So
impressive.
a lot of I forget the name of the organization, and if I'm going to describe it, if someone knows it, by all means, please say something. But it's a Christian church nonprofit that their whole mission is they give water to like areas that don't have it. Like they supplied water to Flint, Michigan. They go to third world countries. Like, they can set up like filtration systems in rivers that's basically pure mud and give fresh water. Well, they went
Wow.
around and hooked up these water filtration systems to every single school, because Asheville currently has water, but when you turn it on, it's brown, and they tell you it's 100% not potable. And to
Okay.
shower with it probably still feels bad, but these filtration systems can like make fresh water. So as
Wow.
soon as the schools had fresh water, they immediately started getting kids back in school, just for the normalcy of it. I mean,
Yeah.
my wife's a teacher, and I heard and her school actually surprisingly did not lose internet. I don't know if they're satellite internet or not, but as soon as they had power, they had internet. So like, they were opened up as a community hub. Almost like day 4 or 5, they opened up. And they may have had a Starlink system. I don't know, because Elon Musk donated a lot of Starlink. That's his big thing. He always donates the satellite internet. But regardless, they had it. But I remember hearing one of the seniors say, "Is like I lost my freshman year to COVID. I can't lose my senior year to this. We need to be back in school."
Very fair.
And I mean that's pretty big. And like
That is
the thing
huge.
that I always think about is that like this is football season. Football is pretty big to these kids around here. It's big to the town, and so like the game they were able to finally play a game back last week was the first game they played, and what a pride moment. The town that I live in, they beat their rival 49-0.
Nice.
I think those boys had some aggression to get out.
Yeah, but I mean
energy.
but there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot to be said for return to normalcy, and you know, like I don't know out in the audience like how many people have lived through an event this serious, or they had this far-reaching set of after effects. But like, there's a lot to be said for just wanting to get back to your normal routine, and it is the littlest stuff that makes things more bearable. Like you brought up, you know, people being addicted to substances. Like there's a reason why there's 25 pounds of coffee on that back shelf and like 2 pounds of pipe tobacco over there, because if I have to go through a disaster, I want to have my, you know, my smoking pipe and my coffee. That's just my comfort. But for these kids, it's their routine, it's school, it's sports, it's talking to their friends. It's all those things that kind of adults don't think about because we're thinking about big problems. And I think sometimes like we totally overlook the fact that like for these kids, they're dealing with the same thing we are. They just see the world differently. I mean, the day after Hurricane Ida, my kid was flying a kite in the front yard because the wind was really good for it. Perfect way for her to decompress after spending a night sitting in the hallway with us, listening to a Cat 3 hurricane blow the roof off.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the return to normalcy is definitely something. I mean, I used to remember. So when my wife hurt her shoulder, the reason I was out of town was because I have access to some hunting land about 5 hours away, and I just went hunting. I decided like our personal house was good. We had power, we had water, we had food, and I needed. And I've been at that point a week working with the first responders, and then just clients coming filtering back into my business. Like I need to go sit in the woods, and so it was good. It was perfect for me to go sit in the campground. Well, we call it a campground because we've built a small campground in these woods, but go sit around a fire, you know, shoot the shit with my friend, and then sit under a tree the next morning watching deer. It was the return to normalcy for me. And speaking of that, which is kind of interesting, something I haven't really thought about till actually probably a couple of days ago. Most of the meat that I eat, honestly, is because I harvest it myself. And at this point, generally in like the hunting season, I have already put 2 to 3 deer in the freezer. I haven't gotten one yet because of the storm, and most of the places I hunt don't exist anymore because I always hunt at the riverbeds. So like I think I'm gonna have to actually buy hamburger for the first time in years, which is not gonna be fun.
It's going to be a change for sure.
Yeah.
You know, this is a little bit of a backtrack, but you were talking about how nobody can be ready for a 35-foot wall of water.
Yeah.
And when we were talking with the guys from Terminal Element and a few of the other shows that we had on a couple weeks back, they were saying like, one of them brought up, are there events that you just can't prepare for? And I think this is one of them. But what you can do, and what I think you were able to do, and some other people down there were able to do, is they were at least able to care for themselves and lighten the burden on the other emergency response communities. You know,
yeah, if you have the ability to feed yourself and water yourself, then not have to go pick up supplies, then you leave the supplies to someone who absolutely needs them. And you know, maybe was less prepared, or maybe just they could have been all the prepared in the world, but their house got floated down the river.
right? I mean, if my house got taken out by a river, it doesn't matter how prepared you are. All that stuff is now 50 miles, 100 miles downriver. You're not getting it back.
But that is kind of a key point, though, is that if you are the person that takes what we talk about in the show seriously, and you have dealt with your own family's preparedness, you're right, Eddie. You aren't one of the people that's scrabbling for supplies at the last minute. But if your neighbor or your friend's house gets taken out, you're now in a position to care for yourself and potentially help them too.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
like
this was
and that was
God.
something I well, no, you're good. But it's something I definitely wanted to talk about in the show because like I don't ever want one of these AARs to turn into like these people should have prepared better, they wouldn't have been screwed, because there's the truth
Absolutely.
of the matter is that there is a certain point at which there is literally nothing you can do to avoid. When I was enlisted, we always used to say that the best you can hope for is to avoid the bullet addressed to whom it may concern.
Right.
But if it's got your name on it, that's it. It's your turn to go. There's no
Yep.
getting away from it, so it is what it is. But the goal is always the reason you keep your head down, the reason you look for cover and conceal, but the reason you do all the soldier stuff is to avoid the bullet addressed to whom it may concern. And that's kind of the way I look at these kinds of storms and these disasters. Your goal is to avoid the storm addressed to whom it may concern. But if that river picks your house to move or that tornado picks your neighborhood to flatten, you're out of luck. That's it. But the goal is that if you're not, now you're in a position to care for yourself. You're in a position to care for yourself and your family. You're in a position to help your neighbors. You're in position because you have the things. And that's also like one of the reasons why I've been shifting focus in the last several months towards trying to educate communities, because if you have a whole community of people that think the way we do, now if any one person's home gets wrecked, everybody else can help. But like you said, Eddie,
Yeah,
like day one, y'all had all this help screaming in that area, but there will almost never be a situation where there's enough help for the number of people that need help. So if you could take yourself out of the realm of I need help, then you lessen the load for everybody else.
yeah. There's a couple thoughts there. I mean, like some of the houses that got flooded. I mean, there was definitely areas that got flooded last time, so we knew they were going to get wiped out. Unfortunately, they're usually the poor areas. Like the trailer park got wiped out again. We knew it was going to happen. Most of the people that live in the trailer park are the migrant workers. They're good, hardworking people that are here to provide for their family. Their kids go to these schools. They're hardworking people. They just live by the river because that's a cheap area. It's funny
Unfortunately.
that living by the river is the cheap area, but it's because it's the trailer park. But regardless of that, but a lot of people that lost stuff, like my friend that had their basement flooded, and a lot of other people, they lived, a quarter mile from the river. You're not expecting water to hit you when you're this far from the river. So, like a lot of people who lost stuff, just like how do you prepare for something going through your basement when you're that far from the river? But going to, trying to help for people, this was kind of like the enlightening eyes open moment for my wife, because like we have lived through hurricanes before where she has, students who had to tell her like, hey, they had to get carried out by boats from, the the project housing because that's where they were, and like the town didn't care. But like it was so impartial to her because it was a student. And yeah, my wife is incredible, empathetic, and she cares for all her kids. It was her student. She didn't really know them outside of just it's a student, if that makes sense. But when it
Yeah.
happened to friends, and like she's actually, when
It's no
she I
longer a
think helped her,
professional barrier.
yeah, when she helped our friend basically grab her wedding dress and go, I guess we'll throw this away because it's ruined. That I think it kind of hit her. So right afterwards, I remember that night after the first night of helping our friends, clean up just throw their whole life away because we're just stripping everything out. Um, she comes to me, she goes like, hey, I want to start keeping cash on hand in the safe. I want to start, once she basically like equated preparedness not to the crazy gun guy, and we're stockpiling guns because for the third world war, and actually going like, hey, if we would have had these things, we could have be in position to help our friends more because we've already taken care of ourselves. That's when I think she started getting on board with everything. And I can't, again, fault her because she's the better person with money. So in order to do all this, we have to be better with money, and that AKA means Eddie has to be better with money. So like her wanting to jump on board gives me a reason to be better with money.
But I mean, I think you just kind of
Couldn't
made
say
my
it
point
better.
though, man. Because like she's look it sounds to me like your wife is looking at this from the perspective of like something that is very obviously very important to the two of y'all, which is helping your friends, taking care of, the people that are in your lives. If preparedness is a route in that direction, she's on board. And
Yeah.
that's why I know you had expressed this to me like some weeks ago. And I had said, I hate that this experience has been so frightening for her because it is. But my
Oh my
hope is
gosh,
that
yes.
something good comes out of it. Like this is as awful as of an experience as it was. That the downstream effect is that it's a change in lifestyle towards something that might benefit the two of y'all.
Can I do like the mental health aspect of this for a minute?
Please.
So like
Absolutely.
she won't be mad that I share this, but she started experiencing panic attacks when trying to lay down like last week. So we're what 3-4 weeks removed from the storm. She started experiencing panic attacks while sleeping, and like she couldn't understand why. And so like and then I've been hearing these from other people and clients, just like the now that they're starting to wind down, that's now when the panic is hitting. And that's pretty common actually. The human body is really good at trying to keep it together when the shit's hitting the fan. Not everyone can do it, but the human body essentially wants to live and wants to survive. That's why we think of suicide as such a taboo, because it's so hard for a rational brain to go, I'm going to end myself. And so that's why the rational brain go, I'm going to survive the storm no matter what. And if that means I need to block off certain emotions, and that's what it's going to do. It's not healthy when the brain does that, for the record, but it's how the brain views it as, I'm going to protect the host, which is you. And so when things start sliding down, that's when your brain starts trying to decompress and work on everything that's going on. And if and that's when like a lot of people start experiencing these panic attacks. And can I share a technique that I've shared out that'll save you guys, $100 from going to a therapy session? It takes,
Hey,
honestly,
anything
guys,
you're willing to
30
share.
seconds. It takes 30 seconds. And what it is, so what I got to do a slight build up. So we understand with the human brain, we have the left hemisphere, right hemisphere, we have the prefrontal cortex, and you have like the central nervous system, basically the part of the brain that is the sleep, eat, kill, fuck part. It's the animal part. And yes, I understand I say the F word a lot for a therapist. I'm not on duty right now. Get off my butt. I did 10
He's a
years of
better
fire EMS,
therapist.
and I did 10 years of fire EMS. So my first boss was a Navy chief, so I know all the words. Anyways, the so we understand that the left hemisphere, right hemisphere, the brain doesn't like to communicate across the hemispheres, and we know that for a fact, because it's just because we can shut down one half of the hemisphere, and the body can act somewhat abnormal, because because it's not trying to communicate and try to make up for it. So what we do though is to get the body to communicate. It involves two techniques. It's called a thing called box breathing, and it's essentially, imagine it's when you breathe in through your nose and you're out through pursed lips, like, and you do it for 4 seconds. So you count, but you breathe in, that's one side, you hold for 4 seconds, you breathe out and you breathe back, and you hold and you just keep going it. So imagine you're basically building a box and just in your head, because it's the 4 steps. Well, you incorporate that while also, if you're right-handed, you put right over left. If you're left-handed, you put left over right. But you cross your feet, your arms, you bend over like you're sitting down, like you hunch over, you put your eyes on the ground, bend your head down, and then close your eyes. Essentially, you do a lot of different things that you don't normally do. We call it pretzel breathing. But what it's essentially doing is, because you're crossing all these different aspects, your body recognizes you don't usually do this, and so it starts sending signals all across the brain and up and down the central nervous system, aka that like core survival part of the brain. And you count to 120 while doing this breathing. And what it does is that we know for a fact 2 minutes resets the central nervous system. And so while resetting the central nervous system and being cross and making your body send signals back and forth, it will essentially make your body figure out what's going on and release the quote unquote negative, even though emotions are neither positive nor negative. They're just emotions, but it releases the negatives that are having hold on you, resetting the system and allowing you to almost take a breath.
Interesting.
I've actually heard that before.
Yeah,
Never had to
I've
do
never
it,
heard
but I've
that.
heard it.
It's essentially EMDR, because the EMDR involves rapid eye sensitization and movement, basically making the brain communicate. But it's a light version of EMDR. And
Interesting.
and the other thing that you can do is that I think I forgot to mention this part, because when I said cross, you basically, you take your right hand over left hand if you're right-handed, because I am. You grab them like I can really show it holding a video. So if you guys can think of a better way of showing this, you can. But you grab your hands, put it to your belly, flip it up, so you're kind of crossing all these different things in a weird way, and then you do the bending over. If that hurts because of your wrist, just cross over your arms and tap your shoulders. Like, the idea is that the more movements that you can do, the more things that you can incorporate into it that you don't normally do, your body will start trying to figure out what's going on. You can also, if you're having a distressing memory nightmare, do this with your kids, for the record. If your kids are like having distressing thoughts and stuff, have them think about that distressing thing while they're counting to 120. And if counting to 120 is hard, set a timer. And what it'll do is your brain will essentially try to figure out what's going on. It's the same thing like if you've ever fallen asleep and woken up with like an eureka moment, it's because your subconscious has taken over the brain and figured it out.
Interesting.
And yes, this is basically stimming. What stimming is it's making the brain use more signals firing back and forth. But the idea is that we're resetting the system and getting yourself out of that fight or flight mode.
So you're hard rebooting your brain.
Sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard reset. And it's really good if you work like jobs or, like it's really good for first responders, but it's really good for jobs where like it's go, 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 go. Because when you're done going, you can't just stop. Like if you take a long road trip when you get home, even though you're exhausted, you can't just fall asleep because your brain is go, go, go still because you've just been awake. So it resets the brain, allows it to calm down and go to sleep. Or, get out of the panic mode.
You would have been really handy to have around about 20 years ago when I got back from Iraq. Thanks, Eddie.
Yeah. You're welcome.
You found it
20 years ago, Eddie. I was graduating high school.
Well... Thanks. I was demobbing and going to college, so I wasn't that far ahead of you.
I was in, I think, 8th grade.
Oh, thanks for that, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, so that's essentially, I just saved you $150 from going to a therapist. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a therapist. I love our profession, but like a lot of the stuff that we try to gatekeep, you don't need to gatekeep. This information's out there to better your community.
That's fantastic.
But if you do need a therapist or you just want to talk to a therapist, Eddie is available if you live in his area.
Yeah, in North Carolina, and I'll do this plug because I know you'll be okay.
Absolutely.
With it. If you're looking for like a pro-gun therapist, look up Walk the Talk America. It's an organization I sit on the board with. We are the intersection between guns and mental health. We work with the firearm companies to basically be pro mental health, and we train therapists to understand what basically is gun culture. But what we have there is we have two things. We have a free and anonymous mental health test that you can take that doesn't get reported anywhere, but you can take it and go, hey, these answers are indicating that you may be suffering from anxiety, maybe suffering depression. There's a whole host of other things that, for record, but I just use those two off the top of my head. If you would like to learn more, we have basically a list of therapists, like you can filter by state that have taken our trainings the trainings involve all the way, learning all the different about gun culture. It's all in all, it's like a 5-hour training, but you can take you've gone through our training that are not essentially pro gun. Some of them are, but they're not anti-gun essentially. So you can go to them, it's like, hey, what do I do to relax? I like going shooting. Because a lot of people are taboo to say that. I'm not going to go into the reasons why. You guys can probably figure it out. But again, it's Walk the Talk America. It's and the test. It's WTTA.org/love.
Nice. We talk about physical health on this podcast a fair amount. We talk about financial health on this podcast a fair amount. Mental health is no different. If your body and your mind and your finances aren't in order, it's going to make everything in life harder. So if you're having trouble, you should address it in any of those aspects.
Mm-hmm.
And to that note, the person that I went off on earlier about FEMA, I do apologize for the shortness of it, but you struck a nerve there because I'm personal friends with some of the people on the ground in those camps. So it struck a nerve. I understand they're not perfect, but it did struck a nerve.
Well, unfortunately, like you said earlier, Eddie, the government has red tape. We all know that. And in this case, unlike in the Gulf Coast, on the East Coast, you guys aren't used to that many hurricanes or that severe of a hurricane. So the infrastructure can't handle it. And if the road doesn't exist, the truck can't drive down it. and then you're stuck with hurricanes or with helicopters. And there's
And
not a whole lot of
mules.
places. Yeah, you're not a whole lot of places where you can land a helicopter in a mountain community.
Yeah,
Especially if the
the
roads
Harley
are all screwed up.
Harley Davidson unit over in Hendersonville became impromptu airport because they had a big field.
Really?
So they would land, drop all their supplies, and take back off. And there was a constant rotation of helicopters just landing there.
That's fantastic.
That sounds
Yeah.
very familiar.
Yeah, disturbingly familiar, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, having lived through Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Ida, that sounds familiar.
Yeah. The one thing that I saw the other day is that we do have special forces on the ground, including including the other, like, the National Guard, but they're there, honestly, providing security for the workers because of we had militia units show up in the area that some of them was overblown, but we heard more about that actually coming up. People were actually looting and attacking the camps, trying to steal supplies. So the special forces unit showed up to provide security for basically the people living in these camps. Because the cops are overworked, so these guys, they can blend in the camp and not be seen. But I noticed some of the stuff, and I texted a buddy of mine, and he's like, "Hey, are some of your friends here?" He goes, "Yeah, where are you at?" I was like, told him, he's like, "Yeah, they're there." I was like, "Cool."
Fantastic. Love to have them. If anybody's going to be providing security and it's special forces,
yeah. I noticed a guy with a pistol. I noticed a guy with a pistol and a beard that looked way too military, and I just texted a buddy of mine that used to be in
you are in
a
way
Green Beret.
too good a shape.
Hey, I got some friends.
You mentioned the looting, and this comes up after every major natural disaster. There's always terrible people taking advantage of a terrible situation. But it sounds to me like the vast majority, in this case, like with most cases, are people trying to help other people, or at the very least, trying to not get in the way.
Yeah, I mean, we have the people that are taking advantage of all the free stuff, going through there and getting everything they can to resell. We've already seen that. And I will say this: we actually had when the gas stations started getting turned back on. Two of the stations in the town started trying to price gouge. All the politicians immediately called them out and put them on full blast on the internet and everything, and shut them down. Governor Cooper, whether you like a Democrat or not hate a Democrat, he's our Democratic current governor. He's kind of a lame duck guy because he's heading out. So because he's lame duck, he decided to use emergency powers on this one, and he suspended the gas tax in Western North Carolina. So all of our gas is super cheap right now because you don't have money.
Hey, what? I mean, if that makes the difference for people, I'm glad that he was willing to help.
Well, and I mean, if you think about it rationally, that money is supposed to go towards fixing the roads, which are all currently destroyed. So why,
what good is that money going to do now?
Yeah. I've definitely heard some bad stories, stuff like that. I mean, one of my clients, I'm not going to go into too far specifics on this, but their boss essentially lied to him and not paying, even though he's salary, and said, "Oh, we can't pay you because you're not at work," even though they're salary, and pulling a bunch of other shady stuff. I've heard more stuff like this happening. But to that end, there is if you happen to be in this area, in the Western North Carolina area, look up Pisgah Legal Services. They provide free and pro bono work right now to anyone affected by the storm. A lot of what they're doing actually is helping people navigate the FEMA stuff because it's confusing. It's especially because sometimes you can get turned down because it was a government, it was a computer error or something. So they're helping people just navigate that stuff and providing the lawsuits and other stuff to the companies that are gouging people. So I mean, it's cool to the amount of the people that are stepping up in their own professions.
It's fantastic. I mean, we all have skill sets, and mine is definitely not handling government paperwork. So I would be lost.
It's not a skill set to be proud of.
Insurance stuff. No, I pay people to be experts in those fields.
Exactly. I mean, unfortunately, right now, I'm sure you guys are still probably having network connectivity issues and stuff like that. So it's probably difficult to even research this stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, and for the record, because I know I said I'd mention, I am on a hotspot right now. And so we have essentially used in this hour of streaming 1.5 gigabytes of data. So use that for information if you ever need a backup hotspot.
Nice. That's good.
That's about what I expected.
It's a little more than I expected. Interesting.
I mean, for like 1080 for 1080p video streaming, that's about on target.
Yeah. That's good. Fantastic. All right, Eddie. One more quick thing, Phil.
Sure.
What's the biggest thing you think you need to assess for yourself to change before next time? What's the biggest thing you need to assess?
Have an escape plan in case something goes wrong. We knew a plan. My plan, essentially, my plan involved the main highways, and the main highways didn't exist. And then so that's plan number one, is to have multiple routes in and out of this area in case something we had to leave, because like we have a camper, we could have gone, we could have packed up the dogs and the wife, and if we didn't have power and water and stuff like that, we would have and didn't have a generator, we would have hightailed it to Pennsylvania to her parents' house. Nothing against my parents, even though I'm in North Carolina, but her parents have a fenced-in yard. We have dogs. It's kind of makes it easier with dogs.
It does.
But I don't know. I would have had to. I don't even think I have a paper map of the area. I think I would have had to load up a Google map of just a static image and just try to use that to get out of the area. Just because I don't because all the roads that I know, the secondary roads I know, don't exist either. So I don't know how I would have gotten out of the area. And then I know you only asked one, but priority number one, I've already told the wife, is I'm going to hire an electrician to put in things that I can just connect my generator to. I know that I can probably do it myself, and there's enough knowledge in our Patreon to go through it. But when something that's going to connect straight to my house, that if it goes wrong, my house burns down, I think it's just worth the couple $100 to pay someone.
I paid for it. I mean, I had him do a full, but I had him do a full panel swap and a generator hookup, and it was like $1,200 for the peace of mind. That's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it hooked up to my barn, because I have power. I have a sub panel in my barn that runs back to the house. So I'm just going to have it hooked up by the barn, so that way the generator is far away from the house. That way you're not even hear the damn thing. The chickens are going to hate me, but whatever. They're annoying.
The chickens can bitch.
Yeah, well, they do that
can't
anyways.
hear them either.
Exactly, because of the generator.
Yeah, and no, that was the thing. It was kind of surreal to kind of think about the difference between this hurricane, the hurricanes I experienced when I was living at the coast, and not where I grew up, the hurricanes near Pembroke, when we were there, is that even though there's looting and stuff like that, I didn't ever feel in danger from my wife, or I did my previous place, because the previous place, they've locked down everything because I've only had to pull a gun a few times in my life, and that was one of them after a hurricane. We had a group of 6 guys trying to come into our yard to rob. And if it wasn't for the fact I had an AR strapped to my chest, my wife said I was overkill, but those guys showed up. They saw the gun to my chest, and I specifically heard them say, "Not this house, they have a gun." They went 3 houses down, and unfortunately, I robbed and raped a woman and took all her stuff. So, thinking back on it, man, I wonder if shooting first would have been an issue there, but probably in the time. But
unfortunately,
here, I didn't feel in danger. So, it was a weird dichotomy of hey, we don't have stuff, but my neighbor is all of my neighbors I trust. It's so weird, just being in this area versus somewhere else.
That's a lot to be said for having a quality community around you. And if you do have the luxury to relocate to a place with a better community around you, money can't really, money can buy that, I guess, but there's not a value you can put to that, to me.
Yeah. I mean, I've left the house before and forgotten to lock the back door just because I went out and threw the trash the night before. And my first instinct when I got home wasn't to panic, "Oh my God, what's stolen?" Of "Oh, you idiot, why didn't you lock the door?" Now, that wouldn't have been a thing at my previous place. I mean, I left my car unlocked one night, came out, and they stole CDs. Who steals CDs these days?
Yeah, they're $9. What are you doing?
Things you can get away with when you live in the country.
Yeah. There's a benefit to it a little bit.
Yeah, no, the storm was enlightening. It definitely was more devastating than we thought, and a lot of the stuff is just the build back from this is going to be rough, because I read a report the other day that because the lack of power and the lack of water, a lot of restaurants just can't be open right now in Asheville because you can't cook with dirty water.
Right.
And so a lot of the people in Asheville are service workers. So if there's no service, they're leaving the area. So there's mass droves of people leaving, and which then the housing in this area is already insane. And instead of all these people leaving and making it better, I've already seen the reports that what housing does exist. The landlords are like tripling the rent to try to get money from people.
No,
Which I get, it is your prerogative to do so, but like it does suck.
There's at a certain point, there is a moral obligation there to not be a complete shitbird.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the hard part to me, as we start to wrap this up, because I hear giggling little girls in my house, which means the pre-Halloween festivities have begun.
Oh no!
So Phil's gonna become a giggling little girl in a second. Got it?
No, yep. Phil is going to be transporting.
Phil died.
Uh-oh. I think we lost Phil.
All right, so the girls. Well, so if you're listening to this, and you're on screen, what I see is a little hand coming into the screen. The girls are taking over right now.
All right, so I think we have lost Phil. I do believe the girls have pulled his internet in order to send him probably trick-or-treating early. We'll find out. We'll see if he comes back here. Eddie, did you want to plug your practice?
Sure. If you're located, yeah. I mean, if you're located in North Carolina, my practice is called Mountain Mind Counseling. My only ask is that I can't be direct friends with you. There has to be some clear separation. But feel free to look it up. It's Mountain Mind Counseling. It's my website's mountainmindnc.com. Awesome. So that's mountainmindnc.com. Yeah, feel free to do that. Oh God, the terrorist is back.
So did they rip your internet out of the wall to force you to go trick-or-treating, Phil?
No, the power blinked because we have a storm front that's getting ready to pass through, and Stuart is going to absolutely fillet me for this, but I still do not have a full battery backup on the podcasting desktop. So when the power goes out, this backup.
Oh no.
But I didn't want to just say goodbye without thanking Eddie for coming on the show and giving us his perspective. Because, like, you know, you and your community have lived through something pretty serious, and I think for a lot of people around the country that aren't there and don't really have a good signpost for like what that is, it's hard to put into. It's hard. Yeah.
Absolutely, it is. Really appreciate you coming on, Eddie.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me and letting me kind of share their perspective. Again, like I know I shared the practice, but if you guys have questions and stuff like more the techniques, feel free to reach out through the email link, and I can at least try to help you find someone that like, okay, hey, so maybe you live in a different state and you want to seek help. I'm generally really basically what I'm offering is I'm really good at like reading Psychology Today profiles and like reading through the BS and saying, yeah, this is a person you can trust. This is a person that's blowing smoke up your butt.
Fantastic. Glad to hear it, man. All right. I think, Phil, you can't control all the buttons, can you? If I hit end of stream, will that play the ending video?
Thank you for joining Matter of Facts podcast.
It certainly should.
Fantastic. We'll see if I screw this up. It's been good having you on, Eddie.
Just hit the end button. It'll work. Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye.
See you guys.